Yeah, I was,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. As Sean does that, I want to introduce our presenters. We've got Dr. Mike Balsamo. He is the Dean of Business Information Technology and Culinary at Macomb Community College. He joined Macomb in 2000 as an adjunct instructor and joined the college full-time in 2005 as the Associate Dean of Business. Also with him is Dr. Louisa Krause. She's the Director of Instructional Innovation and Distance Education at Macomb Community College. And they're going to present on levels of AI use in the classroom. So please, Louisa and Michael.
Thank you. Good morning. Let's get this set up. So hopefully you've had enough coffee and water. We made this more interactive throughout our session instead of waiting until the end for questions and answers. We'd like to take notes on things that we discussed to put into the presentation so that when this goes out to everyone, you'll have our presentation and things that we talked about together in this room. So I'm Louisa, as Patrick introduced us, and at Macomb, we are probably in a very similar place as all of you with AI. As we had a task force, we've developed some things, but it's a constantly changing field and product. And so we are just trying to keep up with that.
Thank you, Louisa. As Patrick said, my name is Michael Balsamo. I'm the Dean of Business and IT and Culinary at Macomb. Prior to my dean position in business, I was the Dean of Learning Resources at the college. So I recognize a lot of faces here. I was in that role for about 10 years, and distant learning and instructional technology was part of my administrative umbrella in that role. I'm also an adjunct instructor at Macomb. I've taught for almost 25 years. I've taught both on ground and currently teaching remote. I'm also an adjunct instructor at Walsh College, where I teach 100% online. In my educational background, I'm proud to say I'm a Macomb graduate, I'm a Walsh graduate, I'm an Oakland graduate. I was telling the people at my table, I think we have 9 or 8 family members who have gone to this institution. We live very closely in Macomb County, so a lot of us have been here. I'm always glad to see the parking situation is better than when I went to school here. And I still run the 5K and 10K that's on campus every year here. So very familiar with Oakland University. I also went to Walden University for my doctoral work, and that was 100% online program. That really gave me a lot of insight as a student on what it's like to take online classes. So Louisa.
So a little bit more about me. I used to be a middle school math teacher, which I love telling people because the reactions vary there to that. When I left middle school, I came to the college part-time. I worked on a couple other projects through UPenn and a couple grants. I worked for some textbook companies. And then I did not go to Macomb or Oakland. I went Wayne State, Western, and then I moved to Virginia. So my master's is from George Mason University, and I am finishing my doctoral degree in August. And that is all online. So thank you. So it's definitely been a busy few years, to say the least. So I have experience on the teaching side and the student side in the online world. And hopefully once I finish my doctorate, I'll have the opportunity to teach at this level as well. So that's a goal of mine. So at Macomb, our provost and our faculty came to us, everyone came to us and said, what are we doing with AI? What can you tell me? You're the expert, right? You know, because distance education is in my title, I'm the expert on these things, or so often many people think. So we created a task force of administrators and faculty. We came up with recommendations for the provost, and we determined what the next steps should look like at the college. And so I'm going to share those things with you, and then we'll get into the levels and then kind of what it looks like in the classroom or could look like. So we started by coming up with general definitions for the different types of AI. So predictive AI, so that's your Microsoft Word, your predictive text on your cell phones, Grammarly, those types of products. And then there's generative AI. So that's your ChatGPT, where you give it a prompt and it creates something for you. So we need to define these for our faculty, but also for our students. We know that our students have very likely been using AI for a long time. more than most of us have. And so defining it to them so that we can have policies, so that we can say this you can use or cannot use is extremely important. There is a resource page at the end of this PowerPoint, and we did link additional resources throughout, so you have access to all of this. Something else that we determined, Turnitin so kindly gave everyone a free AI detector tool that we did not want, and then took it away, and our faculty freaked out. And we took the stance, and our provost took the stance that until you use AI yourself, until we educate the students on what it is, and until we have a policy that has gone through our legal department, we cannot re-implement something like that. You can't give students consequences for things that they haven't been educated about and that we don't have a solid foundation on ourselves. So use it yourself and then teach students to use it. Are you teaching them about prompt writing? Are you teaching them that they need to confirm the sources and things that AI tells them? Because we know AI doesn't always give correct information. And then checking the accuracy of the information. AI will give you this amazing reference. Is it actually a reference? If you don't check, it might not be. So all things to consider on the faculty side and on the student side. So we are developing, and we have already run some training for faculty, but we are developing a training in Canvas for students that they'll be required to go through regarding AI. And we're gonna better develop training for our faculty as well. We also came up with pretty defined levels of AI use and samples of syllabus language. So these levels can be by assignment, by course, by program. It's really up to our individual departments and faculty themselves, but we wanted to have consistent descriptions so that the math department and the science department and our nursing program all say the same thing, because that's how you can truly enforce a policy, is if you have that consistent definition across the board. So there's 4 levels of AI use that we have defined, and those are what we're going to spend most of our time on today. So it goes from immersive, which is using the most AI, and you'll actually be graded on your use of AI, to restrictive, where you're not allowed to use it at all.
Okay, so earlier this year, I went to a national conference and AI was a big topic there as well. And just like the rest of us, all the institutions at that conference were struggling with how to implement AI into their organization. And really, there were faculty, there were administrators, there were business leaders inside this conference. And really, there was no consensus on how to tackle this. So again, my comfort with that is we're not alone. Every institution, I think, is struggling with this. And as the Dean of Business and IT, one of the things that we're being told by our industry partners is teach your students AI. What about AI? Well, AI. And so really, there is a big lack of understanding of what AI is and how it can be used both in the classroom and in industry. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through that list of different levels of AI and get and tell you what we think are some strategies that you can use based upon our faculty, other conferences we attended. So how you can take this home and implement it at your institutions. So with the restrictive, and you can imagine like English faculty, arts and science, they're really, really having a hard time with how to integrate AI into the classroom. They're really struggling with original thought, critical thinking aspects, right? So how can you restrict AI usage, but at the same time, not use like an AI detector, which has all kinds of problems with it? So one of the things that was mentioned was understanding the student's voice in the written text. So very early on, maybe day 1, you have an assignment, 500 to 1,000 words based upon a personal experience. AI can't do that. It can't give a personal experience. And that first assignment as an instructor, it gives you, again, an idea what that student's written voice is like, okay? So it makes it very difficult for them to use AI down the road, okay? Going forward too, a lot of research projects require primary research. AI can't do primary research. It can't do interviews. So building assignments around certain principles that make AI usage almost useless is a strategy that seems to work. Now, again, for a lot of us as instructors, that is going to require a lot of thought and rethinking of how we have our current assignments set up. But if you really want to restrict AI, you got to be able to create assignments that AI is not really a useful tool. Okay. So based upon this, and this is where we want your feedback, how would this look? What assignments could you give? What ideas would you have about grading this? So again, part of this is if you're going to have a restrictive AI policy, what should the student know? As an instructor, what are you looking for?
That's
Amen.
not rhetorical, right?
No,
No,
that's a question.
no.
That's a question. Yes. If you're going to restrict AI, okay, in your first day handout, you're probably going to have some language that says AI can't be used, right? But one of the things that, like Louisa said, some students see it as a checking tool. It's like Grammarly, right? So what's a big deal, right? So again, if you are going to restrict AI, what tactics, what policies, and how are you going to grade on that in your assignments? I'll give you an example. So like I said, I teach for Walsh online. And in my class, there's 4 discussion boards. And so, they're pretty lengthy. And one student in particular, her 3rd discussion board post sounded completely different than the first 2. So, if I've been doing a lot of AI research, so I'm starting to hear AI's voice, okay? Because it's very, it doesn't sound like a regular person. There's a lot of like proverbially, it's like, it doesn't sound right. So I went back and looked at her first 2 and I'm like, no, this is not her voice. Okay. So I wrote back to her, in the comments, I said, this doesn't sound like you. It almost sounds like you used AI. Be careful going forward. Discussion post number 4, completely different. Back to the original 2, right? So my guess is that she used AI for that discussion, tried to slide it by, and, I caught her. But I couldn't say with 100% accuracy that she did. So I didn't mark her down. I didn't give her a 0. I said, this sounds a little bit suspicious. Be careful.
One of the things that I would say full-time roles. Oh, that's okay. I can project. Pretty loud. Is, don't say you're doing it yet because we don't have something very nice and set per se. I would say, it appears that there's similar to what you did. It appears that you're using, it doesn't quite sound like you. This appears different than what you said before, and they do need to. So I think it's really important for us to get used to doing that as opposed to saying,
Yes.
turn it and said this.
Yes.
Da 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 da. It's like if you start doing that, you are so not gonna be.
Yes. The second you accuse anyone of anything, student or otherwise, they're not listening to you anymore, right? They're immediately in defense mode. They're defending themselves. So you're not going to have a productive conversation. So part of your AI policy and AI in the classroom is learning how to have those conversations with students in a productive way so that they feel they can be honest with you and they know what your expectations are. Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely.
I want to go back to what you suggested in the previous slide, which was to design assignments so that AI is really unattractive to use.
Mhm.
And I've had great success with this in my Comp 1 classes. So I teach the very first level of composition. And at this point, I don't really see where AI fits in to that picture because my Common Course outcomes are assessing very foundational skills. And so in the last few years, especially because of the pandemic, I've started to break my assignments into really small pieces and work on these assignments in class with students. And I've found that for my students who come in person, they really want like a hands-on experience anyway. So working on these assignments with students in class in smaller pieces, I've not had one case of AI this semester, not one use of it. And I didn't have any last semester either. So I think I've made it so unattractive to students and I've offered the assignments in such a way that they can actually complete them. So I think that is super important, especially for certain classes. Like I said, I don't know how my students would use AI yet. It's too foundational. And I'm not saying that it won't happen in the future, but I think the skills that they're getting in this Comp 1 class, they need to show that they're doing the work. So, yeah, I found a lot of success that way.
That's a great point, right? We know that there's research on cheating prior to AI, and students that tend to cheat is because they don't have time, they don't understand the assignment, they don't have the support they need. There's no research directly on why students use AI yet, but I would assume that there's a correlation there. So you're providing them, the foundational things that are going to keep them from wanting to use AI. So that's also something to think about too.
And this really, if you're going to be this restrictive, this, and the faculty that I've talked to, this is the faculty that's struggling the most, because they're like, they don't know how to police it. They got used to turnitin.com. That's a tool. There's no real tool yet to detect AI usage, right? So they're like, and I'm like, well, how much sleep are you going to lose over this? Right? At some point in time, you got to trust your students to a certain degree, right? And again, you have to look at what you're teaching and the way you're teaching it, because if it is that susceptible to AI use, then maybe you need to do things a little bit differently. Okay.
Joanna?
I'm just going to throw it to you, Joanna.
I can project too, but since he's wanting people, just to help Sean out. I think the piece right now I see too, there's a debate going on in faculty's minds, right? One depends on their level of understanding and their own usage. And they haven't quite seen it as the learning tool that it can be either, right? So I know from my own experience, the more I use it and I see how much I learn from using it, now my whole perspective changes to, man, I would want to create the course with this integrated, right? So I think that we'll see that over time. There will be an evolution. It just sometimes takes us as academics a little bit longer to get there. But I'm really nervous about the K-12 students coming out, because K-12 is integrating this quicker than higher education. And so the students are learning how to integrate it into their learning in K-12 right now. And they're going to come to us and they're going to be like, what do you mean this is restrictive? Like they won't even understand that in a couple of years. So I hope we get there too.
Yeah, critical thinking comes up every single time we have this conversation. We actually had a higher level English faculty. He said, is that really the question? Are we taking away their critical thinking? Are we doing them a disservice by banning AI, which the college is not doing? Maybe we need to reframe that question. How can we still incorporate critical thinking, but using AI? And it's very similar to what you said, teaching them how to use it and think critically about what they're putting in, what they're getting out, so that there's not a loss of critical thinking. All right, let's go on to the next level.
Okay, so say you want to use AI a little bit in your classes. What does that look like? Well, again, like for the classes I teach, one thing I found that AI is really good for is collecting research. Again, if you write the correct prompts. So one of the things, again, this is where the students is free to use it, but as an instructor, you're not really giving a ton of guidance on how to use AI. So again, it's not mandatory. It's not something that that they have to do. But if they use it for research, validation of sources, using it, it's great for citation. I find it where I use it a lot at work is for letters of recommendation. It works really good. I wrote 2 RFPs using AI that worked very well. So again, in this case, it's more of a tool. You're allowing the students to use it with a little bit of guidance, but you're not teaching them how to use it. Okay. So how would you integrate this into an assignment? How does this look? How would you grade on this? So again, hopefully you've had a conversation, or it's in your first day handout if you're teaching online. You can use AI for these purposes. How does that look for grading and feedback to the students? How do you get them to understand where the lines are?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the critical component for this level of AI integration is to make sure that students are citing their usage of AI, right? You want them to say, I use this tool. Here's my citation to this tool. Here's the information this tool provided to me. So make sure that seems to be a really critical component of this level of integration. Thank you.
That's a great point. One of the things that at a community college, I found that, sequence of courses is, there's not a lot of prereqs. We allow students to take courses, basically we have a recommended sequence that we hope they follow. But a lot of times it's based upon convenience of courses, their own schedule. And I had a student one time where I used to require that you had to use MLA citation in one of my courses. And the thinking there was, we teach business communication, MLA is taught in business communications. Well, this student said, I haven't had BCom yet. And I don't teach MLA in my class. So I'm like, that's a good point. Okay. How can I expect a student to know how to use MLA if they haven't had it in their course sequence yet? So I was like, okay, well, I sent them to the resources that I had available. I said, give it your best shot. But it really made me think, and it was kind of like very apropos to what we're talking about here, to your point. If they don't know how to use it, and if we're not teaching them how to use it, then you see the problem, right?
When talking about citing and writing prompts and such, we don't often ask students to tell us how you prompted Google to find your search results. And I see a lot of similarities here. And I've asked AI to write APA in-text references and citations and such. It doesn't give me the exact syntax that would be expected in academic level paper. So I see that as an opportunity to say, what's the input? What's the output? How does that compare to the desired output here too? But for me, there's a lot of plugins that if I do a Google search already, I've got a Chrome extension that will give me an AI summary on the side of that already. I have tools that can summarize the web page for me too. So it's kind of, we can keep going deeper and deeper, on the levels of this, but ultimately it comes back to teaching the student ethical, proper usage.
That's a great point. This example I gave you was from one of our BCom instructors who's using AI. And what she does is she has a hybrid class. So she gets to meet, in person one day a week with her class. And they had an open discussion on how did you get your, AI resources? How did you? And the class talked, and she said it was a great conversation because the students were learning from each other on how to use AI. And like what you said with the Google prompt and all that came up. And so she said that was more enlightening for her as an instructor because they were talking about stuff. I didn't know any of this. Okay. But they were finding it out on their own. They had been using it. Right. And so they were sharing with each other how they were able to find the sources, and what she was using it for as a shortcut to speed up the research part of that particular paper that she's working on. So she said that was one of the best classes that she had ever had because the students were just all over it. They couldn't wait to tell each other about how they were using AI because this is something that really resonates with these younger students.
I think one of the things we also need to do is those students, they know a lot more than we do.
Yes.
Just like children, we
Yep.
say children don't know, or we want to protect them or whatever. No, they know a lot. And I would incorporate, I would love to be able to do that. I'd love to be able to say, you know what, talk to me. I don't know what kind of online assignment I could do, but at this moment, but talk to me, tell me what you use, because my kids teach me a ton about this stuff than I ever could understand by myself.
Yeah.
It's not something I even think about because we grew up traditionally doing something different. My doctorate was, almost 30 years ago concept. So it's it's different. And so we need to learn from these guys. That's all they do. They do it so easily too. It's right.
Proactive in that arena too, also addresses academic integrity.
Yes.
Because, tools like Grammarly are taught to, basically meet to a certain standard of writing. That's not how everybody writes, not how everybody talks. And that doesn't mean they're, less intelligent by any stretch of the imagination. But I've got ESL students submitting papers at a graduate level will use these tools to help because they think they have to fit inside this box
Yes.
that's created.
Yep. We see that a lot with students that are language learners still. Yeah.
I've been given the microphone and I feel like I need to stand up and sing the national anthem. No.
The ballgame starts in about 3 hours. So.
When I look at this level, I have a couple of thoughts. One is that I would love to challenge a student in, say you wanted an essay written on a certain topic, to challenge a student to use AI to investigate different veins of that topic that they could then write on. So you're customizing or personalizing the learning experience. They may not know what interests they have in that topic, but by using AI to investigate like the various aspects of it, maybe they would come to then appreciate some assignment that they otherwise wouldn't. And then with your various levels, I kind of see how you would use all the levels in one class instead of putting yourself into a box saying, I'm only going to be a moderate user. Maybe in the beginning, you're a restrictive user. Then a couple weeks into the semester, you become a moderate user. And then, you unfold the various levels throughout the semester.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, because as you educate your students and you use it more together, then you can incorporate it more. Your expectations of them can increase as you go.
One interesting part about this, though, is like, I feel at this level, now there's going to have to be some minimal instruction from the instructor on how to use AI. And that's one of the, again, this national conference I attended was in January. And that was one of the big fears that I heard from the faculty that were in that room. It's like, I barely have time to teach the content. Now, people are expecting me to teach them how to use AI properly. I'm like, well, how hard is that? I mean, really, it depends on the level you want to use. If you're going to really deeply integrate it, then there's going to have to be a certain level of instruction. It almost becomes an outcome objective of the course at that level. And we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, permissive. Okay. So this is where you're saying, go for it. It's okay. Use it. So again, in my class, I have a very large group paper that they are working on currently. And I gave them the opportunity to run it through AI. The reason for it is, if you ever graded a group paper, you can tell student 1 wrote pages 2, and then student here, next one. Sounds like, 5 or 6 different authors. So one of the things I told them they could do is, I want a PDF of the original work, but then send it through AI. And the prompt would be, make this sound like one author. Okay. So what I'm doing is I have the original work as proof of critical thinking that this was the original work, but then I have the AI generated work. Okay. So again, and I said, I will grade the AI generated work because hopefully it'll be a better result. And so I threw that out there. I said, you can do this. None of them did. So, afterwards, I'm like, why didn't you do it? I thought you guys would be all over. So, well, we're not being graded on it. It's really, you said it was optional. It's not on the rubric. And I'm like, okay, but you might have got a better grade. Yeah, well, okay. And, and this is about a 15 to 18 page paper. And one student said, I tried it and it didn't work the way I thought. And so I kind of gave up. I invested a couple hours in it and it didn't really work the way I thought it did. So again, there are opportunities where, again, if you want to stop them from using it as a cheating tool, make them submit original work along with AI generated work. So that way you have evidence that they actually did the work to begin with. So how could you use this in your classes? Or how do you think this could be implemented? How would you grade this? Would you make it mandatory?
So we were just having this conversation last night with some members of our English department. And one thing that I would love for AI to do for me with my foundational students is to clean up all of the run-on sentences that I have to sit down and go over with them. And it is time consuming. And so one of the instructors raised an issue with AI correcting this type of surface error. And she said that once you run it through, then it's going to pick up as 100% AI detected. And so I think the solution there then, again, is to have them turn in the work that is not submitted through AI, but then also show them that they can put their work through AI. I don't know what does this yet, or if there is a tool that will look for this. I hope there is, but that's one way that I think I could use it, is just in the end, the very end stage of an essay, have students submit what is theirs, and then just one final submission to clean everything up, I think would be amazing. So
Right.
If
the pro-
anybody knows what that tool is, please, you can come find me.
And the pro tip there is have them run it through, turn it in before they run it through AI.
And a similar suggestion before we get to the next person. We have faculty that when you use AI, you highlight that in your essay, or you put that font in a different color, and then there's only a percent. So maybe you can only use 15% can be AI, and then you have that color difference. So when they turn it in, you can see if you don't want the two full drafts. So that's another way to look at it as well.
The other thing you could do is have a graded reflection assignment where they write a paragraph or two about what AI changed, right? So what are the differences between these things? And then hopefully they're actually finding their run-on sentences, which is our whole goal in the first place too, for the writing assignments.
Yeah. And there's your critical thinking, right?
Do we have any IT instructors in the room? Just curious. Okay, because this is like a hot topic with my IT instructors, because one of the things that can be used, AI can be used for is coding, right? That's a big thing, right? And that's what they're worried about. So I said, well, why don't you have them write original code and then make them run it through AI? And then have them do some critical analysis of what AI found as far as errors or whatever in the code. And they're like, well, yeah, maybe. Okay.
Thank you. I was going to add the reflective thing. That was perfect. Because I was thinking for this assignment, I would want them to reflect on, review your own section and what did it change? What did you learn about, the next time you're going to do this, right? So make it learning. The prompt, right? So I think somebody alluded to it in one of the other things, but I really think asking for the prompt in the conversation they had, because as the students develop the skill for prompt engineering, there's a lot of thought and syntax and detail if you're actually going to have it produce something good. And then it starts to blur the lines of how much of that is me as the student because of how much content I put in the prompt to get what I wanted. And so I think that's another piece that we can start to assess as we become more familiar with the tool as well, because there's a difference between saying create an email that does X, but if you put 18 contingencies on that so that you get a better output, that shows me the thought process the student has gone through before they start to leverage the AI.
Yeah. And that's been a conversation with our MACA department, right? You can use AI to create logos and designs. And so how do you know what the student used to turn in their final design project for you? So looking at that, requiring them to turn in their prompt writing if they used AI is really going to let you know, do they have an understanding of the concepts needed, or did they completely rely on AI to just throw something out there?
We have another comment over here. It's from me, but it's going to sound different.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sue, and I'm from biology department here at OU. I'm just saying the department just to make sure that the assessment and the level of knowledge that are imparted to my students, because they are basically trained to go to med school. Okay. With that in mind, I have 3 questions regarding AI use in the classroom for my students. Number 1, every time we have a prompt given to the AI, we have to make sure that they are authenticated. Right. So if I have a student ask me a question about a certain topic, I do some analysis, research, and I provide them with an answer along with some research articles to back up with that, which means these are information coming from original work done by experiments, research scientists across the world. Right. So that's the authentication that I provide to the students. That is something that's missing from an AI point of view. Number 2, the basic teaching aspect. So when they come to the classroom, I post recorded lectures. All of my topics that I teach over the course of the semester are already posted for the students, but they still come to my Zoom sessions, right? Because they like it to hear from you, right? They want somebody to teach you, because the teaching aspect is important, especially when you have everything available. Everything is available everywhere, right? But if you are in a clinical field and if you don't know the basic foundational knowledge, hey, don't you know this? No, because I relied on AI. That's not the answer that you would expect from your peers in the field, right? So are we missing out on the basic aspect of teaching using AI? That's my second question. Third question is, I do have exams as part of my coursework. I cannot get rid of it. I taught a tissue engineering class where I did not have exams at all. It was completely based on presentation, no grading, based on presentation. The class was great. They all had A's because no exams, no anxiety, no fear. But the other classes, I do have exams because they need that training for med school or any professional schools. Where does integrity come in there? Where does other things AI play for assessment? We need help for that. So these are my three basic questions, and I'm hoping to get answers from this symposium. Thank you so much for doing this.
I can touch on that a little bit. So we wrote a very general policy for AI use at the college because we know that department by department and even the level of the course is really going to determine how AI is appropriate. You know, if I'm going to have surgery, I don't want a surgeon that has only relied on AI, but are they actually going to be successful to the point that they make it to that part? So it really is an individual decision or a department decision because there are a lot of factors to consider, and healthcare is one of them. You know, on one end, we hear that healthcare providers, once you've come up with your own diagnosis, they're now looking for you to run it through AI to see if AI has any additional ideas. You know, so that is an expectation we're now hearing coming from healthcare and coming from some of our advisory boards is being able to use it. But you do have to have that foundational knowledge. You do have to be able to make that initial diagnosis on your own. So yeah, it's extremely important. And I think as AI continues to change, we're going to continue to have these questions and we're going to continue to have to adapt, right? The only thing in the education field that is constant is change. And so that's just something that we're going to have to continue to try to keep up with.
I think the other point there too is that, you know, one of the things that kind of started keeping me up at night reading about AI is that at what point does some of our curriculum become irrelevant or unattractive to students? So for example, like in the IT world, you know, we all saw, you know, big dip in IT enrollment in programs when, you know, everything's going to be outsourced overseas. No one, you know, there's going to be no IT jobs in America. That was back like when I was going to school here, and, you know, not a lot of students were pursuing IT careers. So at what point do students start looking at, well, because I've been reading about, like, for example, what professions could be most negatively impacted by AI. And you see that, like, for example, you know, just what happened in Hollywood, right? One of the big sticking points was they wanted to make sure they were protected from AI generated content, right? And you're starting to see that more and more. People are starting to worry about this. So, you know, at some point, like, you know, our MACA department, you know, Macomb prides itself on having a really good MACA area. At what point will students say, well, why should I go through all that schooling when I can create content using an AI platform? Why am I going to study to be a coder when I can use AI to write code? Right. So, you know, one of the things I think that's going to happen, I don't know if it'll happen in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, is we're going to have to rethink curriculum and rethink what the future are going to need as far as skill wise, incorporating AI into that. Right. Because really, if you use AI for any content creation, it is about the prompt, and it's going to be the ones who are creative with prompt writing, who can really develop content based around their original thoughts that they can put into a prompt. They're the ones who are going to stand out, right? So it is something to think about. I mean, you know, at one point I was wondering, I'm like, you know, what will be the impact? I mean, what will this do to our enrollment? Okay.
And we're talking at the institutional level, what does this mean for assessment? So we just completed our yearly cycle of institutional assessment of our gen ed outcomes. We call them common degree outcomes. And we assessed communications this year. That was the outcome that we looked at. So we collected student artifacts and we have, you know, our rubric, and we looked at them, and that rubric and that outcome was created and finalized in 2020. So right pre all of this AI. And so part of our conversation and reflection is, how is AI going to change the assessment results at that level? How do we protect from that? How do we ensure that the results that we're reporting out to HLC, into the community, and to our students is accurate? So that's an ongoing conversation that we're having. And something that we have to consider too at that level, you know, at reporting out, how does that change assessment at various levels, not just in the classroom now?
And I also think it's important, you know, the AI still has limitations. One of the things that, and again, in preparing for this, I wrote a couple just AI, like, for example, predict with all available data, the price of Google stock in 12 months using all available data. It can't do it because it doesn't have intuition. It can't make assumptions yet. It can only go by data that exist. And a lot of the stuff that people have been doing, market forecasts for years and years and years, right? And this is the human part of, like, if you're trying to predict the market, if you're trying to see like where investment opportunities are, a lot of it's data, but it's also intuition. It's being able to make assumptions about the world around us and making smart financial decisions. Right now, it does not have the ability to take that leap of intuition and to kind of look at things without using data. Okay, that's right now. 5 years from now, who knows? So there are limitations to that still, which I think is important.
I think we had one more hand before we go to the next level.
Thank you. So I flip it. I have the student, business and management. I have the students run a specific AI prompt, and then I have them critique it and validate it. So I think that falls under the permissive AI so that they can see the restrictions and so forth. So.
Last level.
So immersive. So at this level, you are making structural changes to the course to incorporate AI. So that means that this would be an outcome or objective of the course. It becomes something that you're grading the student on. It becomes the expectation of the student learning at the end of the course. Okay. So again, some parts of the course could be an assignment on how to develop appropriate prompts for the material that is covered in the course. So again, the great thing about some of this is it already exists. So that you can go out there right now and Google how to write a good prompt, and you can find all kinds of, depending on what you want to write a prompt for, there's all kinds of help guides already out there. So that, some of this is easy. I think like critical thinking skills can be assessed by doing a deep analysis of the generated data. Okay, so again, what we know is that AI is not always correct. It's pulling from a lot of different sources. Sometimes the sources are not valid. To your point about sources, like peer reviewed is a big deal, right? So did you pull from peer review? Did you write in your prompt that these had to be peer reviewed sources that were current within 3 to 5 years, right? And your grading rubrics now reflect this. So when you have an assignment that you are requiring AI, the student has to know to what level they're being graded upon and what level of proficiency they're expected to have to earn a certain grade. Okay, this is where it becomes a little more complicated, because at this level, you as the instructor should have a really good, deep understanding of the AI tool that you are using. Okay, one of the recommendations I heard at the conference I attended was get to know one AI tool very well. So if it's ChatGPT, dive into it, learn everything you can about how it works, and then use that as the required tool for your assignment. Say you will use ChatGPT for this assignment. Okay, so that way, and I was floored at all the sources of AI that exist. We met with a business consultant who works in AI, and there was 14 pages of AI links that he gave us to different sources. I didn't know I thought it was just ChatGPT. I knew there was more than that. Okay, but I didn't realize there was that many. Okay, so again, know your AI. Okay, know how to help the students look at AI data and see where it changed and why from the original format. Okay, and again, it's all about the sources, making sure the sources are appropriate, because you all heard about what happened to those lawyers, right, who used AI for briefs. Don't want to do that.
Training you offer students, staff, and faculty on ethical prompt writing, data privacy concerns, what to share, what not to share.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, we're working on it.
Yeah, that's all. It's in development. We do have an English faculty member, and she is developing our student training module that will be in Canvas. that students, we're working out how students will be required to complete it, where it takes them through kind of all of those things. And so then what we need to do on our end is develop something similar for faculty. So for right now, we've done very informal trainings, and part of my team is here, and they've done a lot of the training for faculty on how to use it themselves. Because we're still, for most of our faculty, at the very basic level, you know, we're trying to fight that fear of AI. So they've done a lot of trainings on how you can use it to create lesson plans, how you can use it to do activities, and how you can use it just as the faculty person in the classroom. So our goal is to do more formalized trainings that talks about the ethical use. And part of that, I think, is waiting until we get the legal approval for our final policy. But right now, across the college, you cannot grade or fail a student, you know, just based on some kind of AI output that says this was all AI generated. And I'm sure you're all aware, you know, there's lawsuits across the country right now from students to colleges about being accused of using AI when they didn't. And so we're really trying to make sure that we have a solid foundation and then a solid training. And ethics is really something that came up in academic integrity. AI and academic integrity, how are they partners? How are they not? And then the security is big, you know, cybersecurity is something, you know, that all colleges are really worried about. And so that is a piece that we haven't done a deep dive into, but it's definitely an issue.
I think for anything where you're going to classify as immersive, that's got to be at the top of the pecking order, the level of importance when we're using that as well, rather than, you know, free for all. Kind of, it's having that understanding at this level. If we're going to use AI, I just don't know how we can't offer that.
Yeah. And we, this hasn't been released at large to all of the faculty yet. So we made these recommendations to the provost. It's going through all the faculty committee processes. We're getting everyone on board. So we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the key is that before you make curriculum changes based on AI, the training has to be in place. The instructor has to have some tools in the tool bag before they start making this an outcome of the course. And I know at Walsh College, I was talking to their provost earlier in the week, and at the graduate level, this is where they're looking at doing a deep dive and including AI into the IT program. But again, it's going to be, you know, strategically implemented for very specific outcomes. And again, you know, training and development of materials and staff has to play a big role in that.
Yeah, and we're really trying to be proactive. So, right, with academic integrity, a lot of times it's after the fact. The student is getting told this is a violation. Now you have to take this workshop to learn about academic integrity, and now you can redo this assignment. So we want to flip that for academic integrity in general, but we want to make sure that with AI, we start off proactively. So educating our students, we can't assume that they have the knowledge we want them to from K-12 just because they're using it in K-12. So if we're going to punish them or there's going to be consequences or something, we have to ensure that we have educated them at that level before we can say, you know, you're now failing this class because of AI use.
And I think that's also part of the general body of knowledge that has to be conveyed about AI in general, because, you know, one of the things that in the business world, for example, you got to be careful what you put in AI, right? Because you want to protect proprietary information and certain data, right? You don't want that in the general space of AI. And a lot of business owners really don't understand that, right? So, like, you know, one of the things we're doing to educate the workforce in Macomb County is we're going to start offering on our non-credit side these AI workshops. So, like, part of it's just understanding what AI is and then understanding how it can be applied to a small business or to a corporation. Because again, there are certain things that you do not want to use AI for in a business setting because of it's out there now. It's, you know, fair game.
Yeah, and in the health setting, right, you're not going to go in and say,
Yep,
yeah, Louisa is, you know, this age and all of these things, because now that's, you know, attached, and that is an ethical and privacy concern.
Hi, so Sean gave me permission as a librarian to speak from the librarian perspective. So much of what you're saying, and each of these, I would say, talk to your librarians, partner with your librarians, right? We've been teaching information literacy. AI is information literacy, right? And so how you connect with that, but particularly when you even get at this level, librarians understand data sets and where you're getting your data, right? When you talk about peer review, well, these AI tools are not getting to anything that is behind a paywall, right? So when you think about business, like that stuff's expensive, it's hidden behind a paywall. A lot of things are hidden behind paywalls. Health, that's different. A lot of those things are open. So when students don't understand that, I don't think a lot of faculty understand that it's only so good as the data set that you're drawing from, right? So that doesn't mean you can't get peer reviewed sources, but are you going to get the best peer reviewed sources, right? For that topic, right? It's the same thing when they move to Google Scholar, like, oh, we can get this stuff here, but are you getting the best stuff that you're going to need? So I would just say work with librarians.
Absolutely.
Great point.
Well, let me ask you a question, because when I was Dean of Learning Resources, libraries was under me. What kind of professional development is like the associations offering for librarians to become experts or to become, more skilled in AI? Okay.
There's a lot, I mean, like everybody, well, and they've been saying librarians are gonna go like wherever too. So it's there. We're also building a module for our students for, AI literacy. So you will see that if you're not familiar, if you haven't worked with a librarian, you usually can reach out, and there's gonna be something. So there is, and we're publishing all of that, out as well, open. Now, we also are the ones who, copyright person, so I also tell you that when you put out AI, it's copyright.
Right.
So that is also something very important that needs to be discussed with students and what they're developing in any field.
Yeah.
Is effective.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you.
I can talk more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't have a microphone, so I think it's my turn. I just wanted to say that when I look at the immersive AI, especially that top listing there, I think about that this is an opportunity for instructors that I think we have never had before, literally. Because if you could ask a student to show me your prompts, how did you get to your product? Like usually we have the assignment instructions and then we see the student's product and we grade it. We don't see the thought process in between, right? And that's where the learning is happening. And so if you can interrupt a student during the learning part, if they're off track, then that's where you're going to improve the learning. So asking students to, with their product, or even before they give you the final product, let me see your thought process. How did you prompt GPT? Where did you go with your thought? What were you thinking? That is powerful. I mean, in my opinion, that's even more valuable than the product, because the process and the way that you get somewhere is the most important part.
Almost sounds like thesis development.
Sure, your favorite math teacher always said, "Show me your work."
Yeah. I did in my head.
We have another.
I don't know where this fits in, but from an IRB perspective, I think of some of the work that we see, and the students don't understand that it's not their work. I don't, because I don't know where it fits in here, but it's, and I know some of the like Priminar and CITI, they are trying to get more out there from the AI perspective, but it's got to be eliminated again. These are pro level people, and they're not understanding that piece. Perhaps because we're not teaching it, as we said.
Sure.
But, yeah, we got to tackle.
Mhm. And I know the Writing Center, similarly to how librarians in that field is working on a national writing centers, are doing a lot on AI and putting out a lot of resources. And I think I linked one of those on our resources page here. And they have a lot of good ideas and things to think about as you're working with AI.
The one hesitation that I have about moving to the immersive or required level of AI usage is accessibility and differentiation levels. So a lot of AI work is now behind paywalls. So if you're requiring AI usage, then there's going to be a social economic difference in what level of AI access some of your students have. So your poorer students are not going to be able to get to the better quality AI tools. So that's something to consider whenever you're deciding whether or not to require it. The other issue is what you just mentioned. Anything put into an AI prompt, and for students to use AI tools, they have to sign up for them often, and they have to agree to allow their data to be accessed. So if you are requiring AI usage, then you are telling your students you have to give your information to a corporation. So that is a level of concern that you have to think about. And so what I've done is made AI, I've given them usually a variety of assignment choices. One of them utilizes AI and the other one doesn't. So if they want to utilize AI, then they can pick the one that uses it. If they are, and then I explain to them, here are the concerns. You are providing access to your own data, and you may have to pay for this. And you no longer own what you put out there. That's right. So it's just, again, it's not fear mongering. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if you're choosing to go to that level of AI usage, there are other considerations to keep in mind. Thank you.
We did not pay him for that segue into our last slide here, but that's absolutely right. And you know, your institution can purchase a premium subscription of ChatGPT if that's something your institution is very serious about, to eliminate some of those access issues, but it's still the privacy concern, right? Students are still putting things in there, and I'm sure all of you here, if you do the online proctoring, the AI monitoring features, you know, we have students that we have to make exceptions for. They come on campus and they're person-to-person proctored because they're not comfortable with being proctored by AI. So those access issues, I think, are going to continue to grow as AI continues to grow.
And one point on that too, if you work with a textbook publisher, AI is being incorporated into textbooks. So like, you know, McGraw-Hill has Connect, Pearson has a product, and they're incorporating AI into their LMSs. And again, that's a way of giving students access to these AI platforms. Now, again, you're buying the book, you're going to be using whatever platform they decide. But, you know, it's also happening in industry. I went to a funeral just a couple of days ago, and I just happened to be talking to the person who was a funeral director, and they have an AI generated software now that writes all the obituaries. And so what it does is that when you are the family member, you log into this and you put in the name, you put the tone, you put everything. And he says within 30 seconds, it writes the most compassionate obituary. He said, and he goes over it with the family. And he said, the first couple of times I did, they're crying. This is beautiful. You wrote so well. And he's like, I didn't do it. Okay. And you also see it like in the real estate market too. They're using it for home listings, right? So it's being incorporated in certain industries, and it's for free right now. I told him to enjoy it while it lasts because he's hooked you. Okay. You're just going to have to start paying your monthly subscription real soon, but it's being used like that. And so it's here.
Yeah. So we just want to end with cautions, any additional conversations that you have around, you know, we know that AI has a lot of racial and cultural bias to it. You know, how they define historical data. If you ask ChatGPT to do, you know, like the stock market stuff, it'll say, I haven't been updated since 2022. You know, so how they define historical data versus how we are defining it for assignments may not necessarily be the same. If students are running their assignment through multiple AI tools, what does that look like? What is that doing to their work? So a lot of cautions with use, but I think everyone in this room is in agreement that we can't ban AI. It's just not possible. It's not something that we should consider doing, but as you use it, you need to be mindful of, you know, all the the negative things that might come along with it. All right.
Any final questions?
So we do have some resources here. We did include our contact information. You can reach out to us, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. About 24 years ago, I was called into the office of the president of Walsh College. At the time was President Keith Priddy. And he told me, you know, this thing called online, it's going to take off. And we need to do something. We need to be proactive and put together a team that will provide online courses for our students. So way back then, I had a chance to work with some wonderful people. Some of you I've actually hired in this room many years ago. But one thing that was really, really obvious was that we needed to put together an outreach to our local schools to try to really just celebrate best practices in online education. And one of the things we really want to do is also celebrate individuals who did some amazing things in this space. And so you'll probably see, and there's a list in your folder of our former award winners for faculty members of the year. And at lunch, I'll be actually making a presentation. But prior to that, one of the things we did talk about as a team is it's not just teachers, but it's administrators and it's instructional designers. And I know a lot of you here kind of fall into that category. So one of the things that we decided this year is to have a presentation for an executive of the year. And so I was really blessed because I teach at Macomb Community College, have for many years. I'm also here at Oakland University. Like Mike, I guess, you know, we're kind of inbred a little bit here, but in a very good way. But one of the things that has happened is over the last, and I started teaching when I was 24 at Macomb Community College, so that was many years ago. My hair was a lot darker. So one thing that has happened is you understand if you're alone as an adjunct, and sometimes you realize you've got somebody to count on. And I assure you at Macomb, and Louisa had mentioned this dynamic of, we had this struggle with regard to AI and using Turnitin, and whether or not Turnitin was going to be kind of the tool to catch students. It was really kind of more of that fear dynamic that was happening. Anyways, I wanted to bring up Louisa. We decided to provide her with some recognition, well-deserved recognition, as the 2024 Distinguished Executive of the Year, supporting people like ourselves who are teaching online. So Louisa, congratulations. Please.
Thank you. It has been a journey. I started this job in March 2020, a week before we shut down. So here we are. This organization has been absolutely fantastic. I have a fantastic team, many of who are sitting in the back, and it would not be possible to provide the support that we do without them and without the relationships of our faculty, adjunct or full-time. So I appreciate everyone. Dr. Balsamo has been a great mentor to me from the time I started at the college, and so thank you.
All right, thank you, Louisa. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
So we have a 10-minute break now at between 10:20 and 10:30. Feel free to grab some more things there, use the restroom, stretch your legs, and we're going to have our panel session next.